16 years ago, a Supreme Court ruling allowed states to collect taxes on cigarette sales to non-Native Americans. Since then, every governor has promised to enforce the law, but none has been successful. Now this week, lawmakers approved legislation that could start enforcement this September. But the big question is, what will happen if it comes to that? History tells us the collection of these taxes could lead to problems. In 1997, Governor George Pataki tried to collect, but it didn't go too well. Members of the Seneca Nation created a blockade of the thruway in western New York and clashed with state police. Pataki eventually backed off. Eliot Spitzer promised to enforce the tax, but once elected, failed to follow through. David Paterson now, after making the same promise, is ready to act. In his first year in office, the governor signed a bill in Utica that would curb the sale of these untaxed cigarettes to non-Native Americans. J.C. Seneca of the Seneca Indian Nation spoke to Paterson before he signed that bill in 2008 and is now looking to enforce.
We went there and we met the governor in New York, and we told him there are two paths that you can go down. You can go down a path of dialogue and working together and building a better relationship between our nations, or you can go down a path of conflict and controversy. The governor took the path of conflict and controversy. He signed the bill. You know, he went down that path and has led all along into the course of actions of where we are today. You know, and then that day in his office, I told him, Governor, if you sign this bill, this is an act of war against the Indian nations within New York.
It's language like this that has likely scared off past governors, and according to Long Island Senator Craig Johnson, it's a lack of political courage from the past chief executives, including David Paterson.
What you have right now is continuing illegal acts on reservations on Long Island with respect to the sale of cigarettes. You have real money being made by Native Americans on the sale of cigarettes to non-Native Americans, notwithstanding the fact that the law is they are supposed to pay this money over to us.
On most issues in Albany, you'll see healthy debate on both sides of the aisle. But this has been one of the exceptions. Numerous elected representatives from both sides of the aisle have called for the collection of these taxes, including Republican Assembly Minority Leader Brian Kolb.
The Supreme Court ruled in 1994 that New York State has a right to collect taxes on non-Native American cigarette sales, gasoline, other products. And really, it's about if all of us as taxpayers have to pay our taxes, and this is a tax that should be collected, and it's even not about the money. It's about what's right.
So if this has been the law since 1994, why does it seem all of a sudden this has become such a hot-button issue? Simple. The state has a huge budget deficit, and the potential income from these taxes means it's millions less that lawmakers will have to cut from other programs and services. As head of the Senate Investigations and Government Operations Committee, Johnson issued a report 2 weeks ago saying the state has a legitimate right to collect taxes on cigarettes sold to non-Native Americans on the reservations.
Look, we have over a $9 billion budget deficit. There's real money to be made and collected with respect to the sale of cigarettes on Native American reservations to non-Native Americans. We've passed laws, and unfortunately, due to the executive branch's real refusal to enforce the law for a variety of reasons, New York's at a loss. So I think my report is very telling. It was a comprehensive report that really laid out the situation involving our collection efforts, the legality of our collection efforts, and I think at this point in time, New York State, and in particular the governor, needs to do everything he can to ensure the collection of these monies. It'll help balance our budget.
A good example of a successful business model for the Native Americans is here in central New York. The Oneida Indian Nation runs the wildly popular Turning Stone Casino, located just behind me here. Selling cigarettes on the reservation, whether it's at the casino or at the local gas station, helps run the economic engine for the Oneidas. If that revenue stream is taken away from them or from any other Native American tribe, their bottom line is going to take a big hit.
If this tax does go into effect, that's what it will be. It will be an attempt on termination of us economically and as a people to supply or to provide for our people and to provide for the families and the people of the Seneca Nation. And so that's the way we look at it.
And that's what bothers the Native Americans all across New York. To them, this has only been an issue when the state is in financial trouble.
It's an easy thing to think about when people are telling you there's $1 billion out there to be collected. Well, we don't, like I said, we don't have it. It's in the pockets of New York State citizens. It's a problem for the state and its citizens, not us. We were guaranteed to be left alone. We gave up millions of acres of land in a transaction for that promise. It wasn't just a friendly agreement between friends that, okay, we'll leave you alone. No, we conceded millions of acres of land for that promise, and we want to see it kept.
That guarantee to be left alone comes from a 1794 agreement signed by the United States and the 6 nations of the Iroquois Confederacy. That included the Seneca, Cayuga, Onondaga, Oneida, Mohawk, and Tuscarora Native Americans. It's better known as the Treaty of Canandaigua, and they say that is the supreme law of the land. Do you think it's a lack of respect?
Certainly. I think, this day and age, like when these treaties were done, from 1794 to 1842, and now we're in 2010, doesn't mean those treaties go away. They've been honored and respected for all these many years. And just because New York State now is in a fiscal situation that they're trying to get out of, over $10 billion in debt, now they try to turn to us and make us a pawn in their scheme in regards to trying to show their constituents that they're trying to come after us to collect some tax money that really isn't theirs to collect, because the commerce that happens within our territories is under our jurisdiction. It's under our control, and we manage that on what happens within our territory.
Craig Johnson disagrees.
If you read my report makes it very clear that the federal and state governments are very clear. The treaty doesn't apply to the sale of taxable sale of cigarettes to non-Native Americans on their reservations. Neither of those treaties apply. The report's very clear. Unfortunately, they differ on that, but I'll say this. If they think the treaty applies, go to court and get a declaratory judgment as to whether or not. But based on the court cases today, they don't have a legal leg to stand on.
But Monday's vote in both chambers means collection could become a reality in just over 2 months, a reality that worries Western New York Senator George Maziarz.
Make no mistake about it, if the governor, and I'm not sure that he will this time, really carry out the collection efforts, but if he does in September, there will be a clash of cultures here in this state, probably in southern tier, and I suspect, and I hope that I'm wrong, that there may be violence and that there will be people who will get hurt. And the reason that will happen, that clash of cultures, is because of the vote that took place here today.
It's going to be a little bit different this time. I think our people are going to be more angry, and blockades ensue from the state. Our area is flooded with New York State troopers, and frictions arise.
In order to avoid the situation that happened over a decade ago, Budget Director Bob Megna says the enforcement of the cigarette tax will happen at the wholesalers, not on the reservations. The state expects to gain around $150 million from these sales. Megna also says the governor's office is still involved in intense negotiations with the tribes to resolve any of the outstanding issues with respect to the sale of cigarettes. We'll keep you updated on this story as we approach the September 1st collection date.